The first light of dawn stretched across the African savannah like a slow-spilled fire, painting the grasses in molten gold. Mist clung stubbornly to the lowlands, whispering around acacia trees that stood like watchful sentinels. To most, it was a morning like countless others. Birds sang from hidden perches, insects stirred beneath the earth, and herds of antelope grazed with soft snorts in the distance. But for those who lived by the roar, by claw and fang, the savannah was never truly calm. Beneath the beauty lurked survival, and survival never came without struggle. Beneath a ridge, a lioness lay awake, her golden eyes unblinking against the haze. Her mate, a massive male with a mane dark as storm clouds, rested nearby. Between them, nestled awkwardly against her warmth, were 3 small cubs, no older than a few weeks. They were fragile things, tiny, squeaking, their paws too big for their bodies, their ears twitching at the faintest buzz of a fly. And yet, to the parents, they were the world. The lioness had guarded them with a ferocity that rivaled storms, fending off hyenas, jackals, even her own kind, for lions were not always merciful to their young. But fate, that cruel and unseen hunter, had plans none could predict. As the sun lifted higher, one cub, bolder than its siblings, stumbled away from the nest, drawn by the shimmer of heat rising from the earth. The lioness raised her head but did not move. Cubs wandered. That was their nature. Yet she could not know that a deep erosion pit, carved by the last season's floods, yawned just a short distance away. Grass hid its edges, a silent mouth waiting for the careless. The cub padded closer, tiny tail flicking with curiosity, until the ground beneath its paws crumbled. In an instant, the earth gave way, and the cub tumbled down into thick, wet mud. A thin, piercing cry ripped through the air, a sound sharp enough to freeze every creature within earshot. The lioness bolted upright. The male thundered to his feet. Together, they rushed toward the cry, hearts pounding with primal dread. And then they saw it. The pit was wide, the mud deep and sucking. The cub flailed, its movements frantic but useless. Each wriggle only dragged it lower, the muck swallowing its small frame until only its face remained above the surface. The lioness leapt forward, claws raking desperately at the edge, dirt collapsing under her weight. The male tried as well, his sheer power sending more soil sliding into the pit. But strength, the very thing that made them kings, betrayed them here. Each frantic movement threatened to bury the cub further. The lioness roared, a sound that shook the grasslands, raw with desperation. Birds exploded into the air. The male circled, tail lashing, helpless in his own rage. Their cub, blood of their blood, future of their pride, was dying before their eyes. And then something extraordinary happened. The lioness froze, ears twitching, eyes narrowing toward the horizon. She let out a guttural cry unlike any Marcus had ever heard before. For Marcus was not far, perhaps a mile away, driving his battered jeep along a lonely dirt path. He was a ranger, seasoned and scarred, used to the strange demands of the wild. Yet what he was about to witness would undo everything he thought he knew about lions. The male lion appeared first, stepping onto the path like a phantom, blocking Marcus's way. Marcus slammed the brakes, heart hammering. Any ranger knew the danger. An agitated lion at close range was death incarnate. The beast's mane rippled with power, golden eyes blazing. Behind him, the lioness emerged, her movements frantic yet purposeful. And then, they did the unthinkable. Instead of charging, instead of roaring with hostility, both lions rose onto their hind legs. They pressed their front paws together, a motion so deliberate, so startling, Marcus thought for a mad moment that he was hallucinating. Their eyes, those ancient predatory eyes, were not filled with fury but with plea. A silent, desperate begging. Marcus's hands shook on the steering wheel. His training screamed at him to stay inside, to keep the jeep between himself and danger. Yet something else stirred deep in his chest, something older than fear. He opened the door. At once, the lions turned and trotted ahead, pausing every few strides to glance back, as if urging him on. Against every instinct, Marcus followed. His boots crunched over dry earth, his breath shallow, his senses sharp as blades. Minutes stretched like hours until they reached the pit. Marcus's stomach turned to ice. The cub was almost gone, only its muzzle above the mud, eyes glazed, breaths weak. The lioness stepped aside, turning to him with a gaze that cut straight to his soul. Again, she and her mate rose on their hind legs, paws pressed, a gesture so human it unsettled him to his core. Not a trap. not a threat. A plea. He didn't have time to think. Marcus sprinted back to the jeep, hauling out a wooden plank and rope. Setting the plank across the rim, he crawled forward on trembling limbs. The mud reeked of rot. The plank groaned, bending under his weight. One slip, and both he and the cub would vanish into the mire. Behind him the lions roared, not at him, but in sheer terror, their cries urging him onward. Ahead, the cub whimpered faintly, sinking fast. Marcus lunged, seizing the cub by its scruff. The mud fought back, a suction that clung with cruel intent. Marcus gritted his teeth, muscles screaming as he pulled. His vision darkened at the edges, breath ragged, veins bulging. Finally, with a sickening pop, the cub tore free. He scrambled back to solid ground, collapsing to his knees. The cub lay limp, coated in filth, its tiny chest barely moving. Marcus's heart seized. Then, with a weak cough, the cub sputtered, expelling mud, eyes flickering open. Alive. The lioness rushed forward, nuzzling and licking frantically, her body trembling. The male stood guard, his chest heaving but no longer hostile, eyes locked on Marcus. And then, the moment Marcus would carry until his last breath. Both lions lowered themselves slowly. Not in attack. Not in dominance. But in reverence. They sank down, chest to earth, forelegs bent, heads bowed. The kings of the savannah, apex predators feared across continents, were bowing. Marcus's breath caught. He could only stare, overwhelmed by the enormity of what he was seeing. In their posture was gratitude, trust, something that shattered the ancient wall between man and beast. For a long moment, they held still. Then, with slow grace, they rose, guiding their cub between them. The family turned, padding into the tall grass, the cub staggering but alive. Before they vanished, they looked back once more, golden eyes lingering on Marcus. And then they were gone. Marcus stood alone, mud streaking his arms, lungs burning, laughter and sobs tangled in his throat. He had faced death, yet found something greater, mercy, trust, and the shared language of parenthood. That day, predator and man did not meet as enemies. They met as protectors, bound by something far deeper than fear. And as the sun blazed higher over the endless savannah, Marcus knew one truth would haunt him forever. The wild was not only teeth and blood. It was heart, too, fierce, unyielding, and capable of bonds no words could ever fully capture.